Okay, time for another Q&A. I'm doing this on a Thursday, not a Tuesday night, because I did it on a Tuesday night, and when I went to save it, it just disappeared. Did it again on a Wednesday morning, another hour and a half, 2 hours, saved it, disappeared. So I don't know what was wrong with my system then. Shut it down, restarted, tested it a few times. It seems to work, so I'm going to give it a shot. So let's go through our Q&A. First question starts in the second sentence. Just to add that there seemed to be something odd about the administration's use of repeated statements, fraud, waste, and abuse. Professor Eric C. Nisbet, Northwestern University, correctly pointed out that during the recent interview, such repetition is intentional regardless of the facts. If the statements are repeated, people will believe anything. Okay, so we can take two approaches on this. Politicians always do this. They have talking points, and in any interview, no matter what question is asked to them, they always answer with their talking points, and they repeat it and they repeat it. Somebody who has talking points and sticks to them and just repeats it again and again and again, Marco Rubio. If you ever listen to Marco Rubio, he repeats the same sentences again and the same big talking points again and again and again, because this is what they stick to. So there's one interpretation, is that they have a certain message that they want to get out. They want to get on the news feed, and they get in front of the cameras, and they don't care what question comes their way. They're going to just talk their talking points, and that's it. And if it's a question they don't want to answer, they'll say, look, listen, look at what our party's doing, and they'll just do something like that and bring it right back to their talking points. Another more nefarious interpretation of this goes back, and I believe this goes back to Trotsky. It sometimes is attributed to the Nazi propaganda minister, but I think this goes back to Trotsky in the Russian Revolution. Vladimir Lenin's second in command, that a lie repeated enough times becomes a fact. There are people who generally are misinformed or tend to get their information from one source, and they will believe whatever that source says. There are many people who get their information purely from Truth Social and Fox News. So they are informed about what is said there, even though what they're informed about is not true. But they don't see it as not true. So yeah, a lie repeated enough times becomes fact, or they're just doing what every politician does, which Marco Rubio's been doing his whole career, is repeating a few statements again and again and always coming back to your talking points. Repeat. Bubbles was Marco Rubio doing all this. I don't know what that means, Bubbles. As you already know, people around me are avoiding anything U.S. My stepfamily canceled a trip to the U.S. and don't plan on going until that guy's still there. I promote BMO mutual funds to advisors. I heard directly from them that they have clients withdrawing all their money in the U.S. This is a real thing. It is a real thing. I'm not beholden to any particular country right now, but I'm still Canadian. I still have Canadian citizenship, and it is bothersome when another country says, we're just going to take you over. And then you get a whole bunch of Canadian hate from people who never would have done it before until their orange leader told them that they need to hate Canada. So you're seeing a lot of this across Canada, just anything other than a U.S. product, anything. I myself, I have money invested with JP Morgan. I myself am about 50-50 on whether to pull my money or not. That if this continues on and if it gets worse, I will most likely repatriate my investments and bring at least the management of those assets back to Canada, because you have to take a stand at some point. I know that I will be probably more vigilant than I have been about what I buy and making sure that it is probably anything but American. Not because I have any issue with the U.S. I've lived in the U.S. I considered moving to the U.S. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in Ohio. I have no problem. It's just you have to take a stand against unfair treatment, right? You have to do something. So it really does come down to one guy, by the way. It comes down to one guy, and the world is uniting against one guy, but that one guy seems to be the only decision maker for the U.S. right now. So, questions on live sessions. As you move them to Discord, will there be a way to watch a recording of it on your site or on YouTube? No, the stuff I do on Discord is just for Discord. It's a way to identify when you will schedule a live session. Yeah, I have a channel being set up just for announcements. It's a read-only channel. When I make an announcement in any of the other channels, it gets lost in all the conversation. So this will just be for me to make announcements. And in there, if I'm going to be on at a certain time, I'll put an announcement in there. I'll try to do like a daily update in there as well. I'm in Costa Rica right now, so I don't really have a lot of time to work on all this stuff. When I get back in Canada on the 18th, I'm there for 13 days before I head to Italy. I will get a lot done in those 13 days, and I'll be in Europe for a month, so I'll be able to do a lot of work while I'm there. Let's see, Switzerland here. I start hearing about these talks of not buying U.S. goods. Yeah, so you have for anybody American that's listening. If you have any influence with your congressperson at all, you should be emailing them, calling them, saying, look, other countries are already imposing non-tariff sanctions on us. The government of Ontario removed all U.S. liquor from the shelves, and if you heard the earnings call from Brown-Forman last night, the maker of Jack Daniels, they said, look, this is worse than tariffs, because we're not even going to get an opportunity to make any sales. It's just zero sales. Pointed out that Canada was only 1% of their sales, so it's not a big deal, but also mentioned that Mexico is 7%. So if you start getting this happening in a lot of different parts of the world, saying, well, we don't need to stock the shelves with this stuff, you can take down some iconic American brands. This is a big deal. You don't need tariffs and retaliation. You could simply just have consumer boycotts. And if you want to see how damaging a consumer boycott will be, just raise another country's nationalism. And you don't need the other government to tell its citizens, look, do the best you can to avoid American goods. Canadian government was late to that game. Canadians already had started doing that. So it is a bigger deal than tariffs, and bigger deal than retaliatory tariffs. Been right about many things, but his call on DJT March 4th tariff turned out to be wrong. Yeah, it was to put 25% tariffs across the board was such a stupid plan that you thought no one's going to do it. This is just a threat. So in my model of Trump, I had him as slightly smarter than a bag of hammers. I'm going to have to downgrade him in my model to as dumb as a bag of hammers, because that was just stupid. So stupid, in fact, that the very next day he reversed course on the autos. Said, no, okay, autos are fine. Market is blood red today because of the just tariff here, tariff there. You get tariffs, you get tariffs. It's his go-to word. He's a kid with a hammer. He's going to have a lot of pressure on him to reverse course. And I'm sure you hear some of the construction work going on behind me. I got a kind of like a river type thing that runs through my house. It's built that way, but it's being emptied, being cleaned out, and being retiled with a nice blue and white tile. So it's going to look nice when it's done. So every now and then the shop vac turns on, and you got to get the dust out of the way as you're laying tiles. It won't be long. Yeah, I didn't think he would do it. And then even after he did it, I thought this can't last long. He's going to see the fallout. Republican governors in Republican states with these the retaliatory tariffs have got to be on the phone to him saying this is killing us. You've had a bunch of CEOs in the last 24 hours saying that this is a net negative. You look at the Challenger job cuts report this morning, on Thursday morning, right up the side of the chart. This is not making America great again. If you look at European stock markets, we ran a 52-week screener yesterday. Everything on the 52-week high list was either an ETF that tracked European stocks or European listed ADRs. All hitting 52-week highs, all on fire, while the U.S. has given up all its gains and is now negative for the year. This is make America small again. This is not make America great again. I think, if we're here and this is the end goal, I think a lot of people, are a big fan of the end goal. Yeah, let's make America great again. But you don't make it great again by threatening everybody and giving them ultimatums and extracting concessions and always holding a sword over their head. The car company got a carve out for 30 days. If you really want them to build plants in the U.S. to avoid tariffs, that's a 2, 3, 4-year investment process. You have to give them runway to do it, and dates by which, if you're 20% complete by this date, you're okay, 20% by this date, you're okay. But to say you got a month, nothing can be done in a month. So all they're going to do is try to stockpile as much inventory they can to last as long as they can, but the layoffs have just been delayed. They haven't been canceled. And other companies, in terms of the amount of investment they're going to make, it's just let's just be on hold, because what if we start investing and the tariffs are canceled? Well then, so you want to get there as neatly as possible. This guy is doing this first, and he may get there, but you got to live through this pathway. And during this pathway, everyone's going to look for alternatives, which means you may not get this in the end. You may not get some recovery in the end because, I don't need to go to your restaurant. I've gone to another restaurant. I've eaten. I'm full. Thank you very much. It's a dangerous game to play. It only works to the extent that your opponent backs down. On the phone call yesterday, I guess it was, the Trump side saying, okay, Canada, you remove your retaliatory tariffs first, and you have a chance of us maybe removing ours. And Trudeau, to his credit, which I don't give him credit for a lot, said, nope, it's got to be at the same time. I can't do it. And he's right. If he would have removed them first, that would not have gone over well in Canada. He had no choice. Also on the point of downgrading Trump to be as dumb as a bag of hammers, he thinks that the retaliatory tariffs that Trudeau put in place is a power grab by Trudeau because he couldn't tell Trump when the next election was. Well, he can't because his job ends Friday. He's not going to be prime minister next week. You have the leadership conference this weekend. You're going to have a new leader of the Liberal Party next week. That person calls the election. Trudeau has no power to call the election. It's a parliamentary system. And even after explaining it to the bag of hammers, the orange bag of hammers still couldn't understand. If I say to you, I know of every way in which you can rip me off. I know, don't even try, because I know every way. The only way I can know every way is if I'm predisposed to doing it. And, it takes one to know one. For a comment like that to come out of his mouth, oh, he's trying to grab power. Well, it's fitting, because you have to be predisposed to thinking that way to come to that conclusion, even when presented with the fact that, hey, look, next week, I'm not even the prime minister. I cannot call an election. That's a parliamentary system. Half the world understands that, but not Trump. Is there a section about trading on volatility in the applied course that allows us to take advantage of the current situation? Yes, in the applied options, there is volatility trading in the options, and in portfolio construction, there is also a entry on volatility trading. And right now, we have a trading market. Yesterday was green, today is red. And volatility follows a very simple rule. You are not trading price, you're trading volatility, and you want volatility. And the rule is simple. You sell on green days, you buy on red days. And your indicators will tell you, and when I say indicators, I don't mean technical indicators. They will tell you when that you should be buying on the red days and selling on the green days. So I bought a little this morning. We'll look at in the afternoon. I'll probably buy a little more. I took some profit on some things yesterday, and I'm re-adding today. This is how you do it. Price is irrelevant to me. It's the volatility. You cannot be an investor in a trading market. You can't approach these markets like an investor, because I'll tell you what you've experienced this week alone. I'm up. Oh, I'm down. I'm up. No, I'm down. And you think, okay, well, if your goal is I want higher prices, I bought a stock at this price and I'd like to sell at this price. No. That's very, very frustrating. But there is a way to watch the volatility, and you're buying here, you're selling here, you're trading. This is a trader's market. This is not an investor's market. If you're an investor, the best you can do is just turn off your computer and go away until all the volatility is over. Let's see. I've answered this one. If a company has floating rate debt and initiates a fixed receive floating, pay fixed receive floating swap, how would you calculate their effective cost of debt? It would be, the derivative doesn't change their cost of capital. They still have a cost of capital. So they still have a coupon payment that they must make on their debt. Whatever derivative they use will affect what it costs them, but it doesn't affect the cost of capital. So to get to sort of see that, I can hedge the price of oil, for example. My hedging of the price of oil does not affect the cost of oil. It will affect my net that I pay out, but it will not affect the cost of oil in the market. So if I'm floating a debt issue, it is what the market expects on that debt issue, regardless of what I do internally. There are things I can do internally to offset some costs, but my cost of capital would be whatever the debt went out at without considering the overlay. One of the subjects of what makes Americans successful at business on the subject. I see many countries people prefer to work for American companies or under American management than under locals, particularly in LATAM. Reminds me of experience in Costa Rica where you complain about delays, lack of professionalism, nationals taking advantage of others. Yeah, there are American companies down here, but there are also European companies down here. I don't know so much that it's American companies that people prefer to work for, or if it's just Western democratic or companies in Western democratic countries they prefer to work for, with the U.S. just having more of them. Link for Discord says invalid. Should I email you? Yep. I don't know. Okay. Personal experience talking to friends and colleagues in Vancouver, Edmonton. Noticeable shift in behavior in people's homes. All this media and emotion towards Trump only exacerbates it. A lot of NPCs that don't pay attention to what they put in their mouth. However, a lot of people are avoiding American products on the shelf and buying Canadian and Mexican. Canadian patriots from both sides of the political spectrum, because like you said before, people will vote with their wallet. I know that when I get back to Canada, I will be making more of a conscious effort when I look at products. And again, that is directed towards one person and one person's rhetoric. Trade deficit explosion mostly due to mechanical factor in the M component. 60 billion of gold was shipped to the U.S., not picked up by wholesale inventory data. Would that show up in GDP, gold? Or would that be in the capital account? Would that be classified as a financial asset? That's interesting. That if you purchase gold as an investment, does it show up in GDP? I don't know that it would end up in inventory because it's it's not a business or a wholesale inventory. It's not an inventoriable item. It's just an investment on a shelf somewhere. Um, I don't think so. I don't think so. Gold? That's an interesting question. Um, my my suspicion is that that is not part of GDP. What's your opinion of Ray Dalio? Don't really have one. Um, I know that he has a theory, but when theories start talking about cycles and recurring of history, and now you have this cycle matching this cycle matching this cycle, I tune out right away as soon as I hear all that stuff. So I just haven't given him a fair listen to because as soon as we start talking about these cycles, I just tune out. 2 weeks ago, when you calculated month-over-month numbers in your inflation model, you forgot to multiply them with the seasonal factors. No, they were already seasonally adjusted numbers. You don't have to multiply them with a seasonal factor. They're already seasonally adjusted. How do you read put-call ratio? Do you see it as a sentiment indicator or a contrarian? Um, well, it's a sentiment indicator that could be used in a contrarian way. I wouldn't say that it's either a sentiment or a contrarian indicator. All sentiment indicators can be used to reinforce a belief or to take a contrarian position. Usually sentiment indicators, when sentiment indicators get to extremes, it suggests a contrarian position is probably preferable. But I don't know that I would say it's an either or. It's a sentiment indicator, can also be a contrarian indicator. Investing in REITs by R. Block. He has passed away. Quite an old book, yeah, so there'll be no new updates to that one. Is it still relevant to the current real estate market? Well, it's not a book about the environment that we're in right now. It's a book about how you would value commercial real estate, and I don't think much has changed over 20 years. It really is still a function of the funds from operations. Or the adjusted funds from operations. Net income for a REIT is almost meaningless, especially IFRS. It's almost meaningless. That you would be looking at funds from operations, the growth in net operating income and funds from operations. Your two big metrics. So yeah, I would seem to think it's still valid. Thoughts on bonds in a growth focused portfolio. In my 20s, income is not a focus. Currently bullish on bonds, bearish on equities. Cash on hand, debating whether to buy cheap equities or add bonds. Well, if you think that yields on the long end of the curve are going to come down, because that's where you get your duration. So here's your money market rates. Here are your capital market rates, 2-year to 30-year. And we have very elevated money market rates, and we have kind of a curve that looks like this. I know it looks flat, but it is flat-ish right now. If you think the long end of the curve is going to come down, that's where you want to add duration. Very little duration at the 2-year. If rates come down, it doesn't really change by much because it's duration. Duration not being a length of time, but being a sensitivity to changes in interest rates is very low. So changes in yields there would have little, small effect on the price. Here's where you get the largest effect on the price. And if income is not really your thing, look for a zero coupon bond, which is most likely a principal strip. So you can get, we're in 2025 now, you can go to, let's say, 2048, and you can buy principal strips. And that's a zero coupon bond. So its duration will be its Macaulay duration, which is its time to maturity. That is 23 years. Divided by 1.0, where is the 25-year yield now? call it 1.045. That would be your sensitivity to changes in interest rates. And if you think that end of the curve is coming down, what kind of duration you get here? Call it about 22. So if the long end of the curve drops 100 basis points, you will have a 22% increase in price along with your 4.5% pull to par. So you could get a 26% return over the next year if that yield drops by 100 basis points. What is special about cap rate in particular amongst Canadian apartment REITs? So a couple of provinces in Canada have rent control. So you can only raise your rent so much. But Ontario, for example, if you have a timeline, here is, I think this is September or November of 2018. If your building was built before that, you have rent control. Sorry about the noise there. I've tried to close all the doors out here, but there is construction going on, and inside the house. Every time I'm down here, I upgrade it. So that's the shop vac picking up some dust. Anything built after has no rent control. So CapREIT is selling these kind of units and buying these kind of units in their capital recycling plan to minimize and, in some cases, outright avoid any rent control. For Applied Series, Portfolio Construction Management Series, would you consider doing a video on how we could use mean variance optimization to create an SAA from a few asset classes or relatively broad-based ETFs? You don't need me for that. YouTube is full of that. Excel has that functionality in it. So you can go to YouTube and you can search Excel MVO, and you will find lots of videos that walk you through an MVO for Excel. Lots. So you don't need me for that one. And there's a plane going overhead while the shop vac is working inside. Somebody sent out a memo that Mark is outside recording a video. Everybody start making noise. A U.S. citizen who voted for Trump. California. Oh, yeah, no kidding, rare. Supporting different key issues on a ticket-to-ticket basis. With an overall belief in free market, social trust, security. Inherently, this means I don't agree with certain Trump things or with certain things you say. Well, that's okay. Being an independent thinker, a critical thinker, is what you want to be. I mean, there are people that I like. I don't agree with 100% of what they say, but that doesn't invalidate everything they say. There are some people, and more the younger crowd, that if you say something they disagree with, they then disagree with everything you say. They can't pick and choose. It's not a buffet to them. It's a dinner off the menu. You say one thing they don't like, suddenly nothing you say. Right? So that's the right place to be. We exist in a society where we can call things out for what they are and embrace facts, data instead of propaganda. Yep, I see a huge issue with our culture and that we treat politicians as if they are faultless. Yeah, I don't know that that's unique to you. We also treat celebrities as if they're faultless. We think that because somebody can act, that whatever they say on a social issue must be the word. It must be the word. And most of them are so out of touch with society that they shouldn't even have an opinion about these things. Our obsession with political correctness halts truth-seeking. I agree with that too. No intellectual debates when any opposing view is shut down with insults instead of being settled with intellect. Must be able to discuss the root causes and validity of issues. Well, okay. I appreciate and enjoy the outlooks commentary. Okay, so this is more of a statement. Okay. Continuing thoughts on GDP now, with Monday's reading coming in even lower at negative 2.8. I'm not seeing much of any news coverage of this. Well, it's what it is it's what is GDP now? Right? What is it now? If you had to calculate GDP as of this date, what would it be now, knowing what we know? Because GDP is made up of a bunch of reports that come out on imports, exports, on retail sales, wholesale inventories. We get a whole bunch of these reports every month that if you had all of those separate reports and you knew how they come together, you could be very exact on what GDP is. But let's say you're a month and a half into the quarter, and I say, what is GDP now? If you had to calculate it now, and you'd say, well, based on the reports that have come out, if I had to calculate GDP now, it would be this. So there is no forecast for the rest. It is just based on the reports that we have now. This is what it would be. Negative 2.8. Still, you can't gloss over that, but I don't think it gets the press that maybe it should, simply because it is not a forecast from the Atlanta Fed. It is just, look, if you start the quarter with one really bad report, GDP now would look very bad. Last week when I asked you about pink sheets limit buy order, and a place for a penny got filled at 7.5, limit order fill at the limit price or better. I do not understand how this can happen. Well, I don't want to read the rest. You're just going to lay out the argument. Who cares? Who cares? You got a good deal. Maybe it was a mistake. Don't ask any questions. But what does it matter? I can see if you paid more, then you want to investigate that. But you got a good deal. Who cares, right? I don't know that I would spend this much money, this much time and intellectual energy trying to figure out why I got a better deal than I expected. I would just say, oh, well, maybe I got lucky, good enough. Thank you. How to know what is good news and what is bad news? Depends on what side of the gun you're standing on, right? If I'm holding it, that's pretty good news for me, bad news for you. I'm talking metaphorically now, but, it just depends. Someone's good news can be bad for someone else, or is there a universality that's good, or is this bad? Oh, well, peace is generally good, except for companies that make weapons. War is generally bad, except for those who make weapons. And for those who eventually get power because of it. That's a more philosophical question. If you had a concrete example, we could look at that. Can we say the market reacts to news? We can tell if it's good or bad. Well, good or bad for who? Right? I mean, I imagine you must mean good in the sense that it would allow market prices to go up, bad in the sense that it would allow market prices to go down. It's not always the case. You can have good news and the market will go down because the good news wasn't good enough. And you can have bad news and the market goes up because in the bad news there was some good news about the future. So there is no if-then statement that I can make about this. It is just experience and your starting position when you get news, right? If you're heading to the doctor because he says, I need to see you about your x-ray, and you're heading there thinking, oh my God, it's cancer. Oh my God, it's cancer. And you get there and he says, we lost them with UPS. We're going to have to take him again. Well, that's bad news. You lost them, but God damn, that's good news. You don't have cancer. Well, at least you don't have cancer yet. So, it's a combination of your life experience so that you can interpret it and the starting position you're in when you hear the news, right? To keep a news tab open on your TV on loud. Well, I mean, I have Bloomberg in the background, but it's not I don't know that I would put that as a listed strategy of what you have to do. 25-year-old guy just starting to learn about finance. Should I always be online staring at the screen? No, that is the wrong thing to do. Don't stare at that screen because you're not investing, you're trading a price. And you're not even looking at anything other than the price moving. And you think you're investing or you think you're trading, but you're not. That price movement, that's just noise. And you're not going to do well trading noise. Talking about the switching to non-U.S. goods, many here already started to do it and will not hit the tech giants like Google, Meta. Once again, they will pull up the S&P 500. Dangerous to short SPX. Different interpretation. I don't. From my thinking, I'm not seeing it as being that dangerous. Question about how reverse repo affects balance sheet runoff. The Fed is being repaid through the TGA as bonds mature. How does excess liquidity in the RRP slow the How does excess liquidity slow the runoff in reserves? That question makes absolutely no sense. The RRP, the reverse repo, is in place so that the Fed doesn't have to do open market operations. Money market funds get money, but they can't just sit on money. They got to put it in some security somewhere. So sometimes they get money near the afternoon or the middle of the day. You got to put it somewhere. So the Fed says, instead of bidding up the price of money market securities, give it to us. When that hits zero, it usually means that there's plenty of securities for the money market funds to buy, which means if there are plenty of securities, the money sitting in reserves will start saying, you know what, we can get a better yield if we sit in money market securities rather than sitting in reserves. So then that money starts to flow out. So liquidity starts to flow into money market securities, and when it flows into money market securities too much, it starts to push up the price of those securities, and then the Fed has to step in and try to get rates back within their band. That's a lot of work to do. They don't want to do that, so they want to keep reserves in what's called an ample sort of band, or an ample range. Thing is, they don't know what that number is. Favorite way to play all this volatility? I don't know that I have a favored way. You tell me what kind of volatility that we're going to have, and I'll tell you a preferred way, but I don't know that I have a favored way. A favored way is any preferred way that makes money. So my favored way is any way that makes money. But again, you tell me what kind of volatility we have, and I will tell you my preferred way to play that. What's your opinion on U.S. gold card? I wouldn't pay for it. Retaliatory tariffs from Mexico, Canada, and China just happened. It's going to get messy. Yeah. You said you need to have a tech background to understand AI. I don't know that I said you need a tech background. I said you better understand the technology if you're going to try to differentiate between the different models. I don't understand them. Let's see. What about other sectors? Do we need a background in that too? Yes. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Big institutions like hedge funds don't use technical analysis. They use quants. You can't make a statement like that. Hedge funds can use some technical analysis to inform their fundamental analysis. They can use no technical analysis. They can use fundamental analysis to inform their quantitative strategies. They can use technical analysis to inform their quantitative. No, I don't know that you can make that statement. Someone asked you how to gain debate, structuring, argument, answering, logical skills. You said you need good school for that. Well, this is what higher education teaches you. It teaches you how to be a critical thinker, so that when you hear something, you can tear it apart and say, well, hang on a second, are there flaws in your argument? Are you making leaps of faith? Are you bringing in a whole bunch of assumptions and then ending up at an exact conclusion, right? It teaches you how to tear down these arguments. I don't know that there's only 10 good schools that do it. It's, if you're at a good school, that's what you should learn. If you're not learning that, then you're not at a good school. And there are lots of good schools that do teach that way. How to gain these skills if you have never been to good schools? Think for yourself. That's all it is just think for yourself. And, as you're listening to somebody talk, ask, is that your opinion? Is that an assumption? Is that a fact? If it's an assumption, what's it based on? Where's the basis of this assumption? And you understand that if a sentence is full of assumptions, the conclusion is true only if all the assumptions are true, right? 5-year Treasury was issued 3 years ago. Should the bond be trading at a price such that the yield to maturity should be the same as the prevailing market rate on the most recently issued run? No. I know that sounds odd. Why would it not be? We have to distinguish between on the run and off. On the run, off. Is it OFR? I'm just going to say OFR. OTR, on the run, off the run? Because it's still OTR, off the... my brain is slipping. As you get older, you can't remember things. So the par curve that we see is for recently issued bonds, which generally are issued at par. So if we have a 2-year over here and a 5-year that was issued 3 years ago, the off-the-run bond will have a yield slightly higher. So if you are a bond investor looking to buy bonds, if you can find the off-the-run bonds, in other words, I want a 10-year bond, rather than buying the most recent 10-year bond, you say, let me buy a 10-year-old 20-year bond, you can get a slightly higher yield. Like, we're talking basis points, but it's still a slightly higher yield if your plan is to hold it to maturity. You can get, even if you don't hold it to maturity, I think you'll be okay, but you can get a slightly higher yield than an on-the-run 10-year or on-the-run 2-year. GB now, imports up by 29.7. Yeah, we just got the trade data for December, negative 134 billion. That is a huge increase in the trade deficit, but if you announce tariffs are starting on a certain date, there is going to be massive front-running of those tariffs. So that's what you saw. The import data from January shows massive front-running, and when you have that kind of massive front-running, you're not going to get any price concessions on that. In fact, that will push prices up. So we are also seeing that in the prices paid components of the ISM and in the inflation data. Once tariffs are in place and that volume drops significantly, you're going to see significant disinflation, if not deflation, in those categories. On your point about front-running imports ending up in inventories of consumers, I think that is likely the case, and the data is just out of sync, so not netting off. What I believe has happened is that imports, exports data is being updated. Oh, okay. All right. I'm alumni of Tilburg, done a study in international business, purchased your course. A couple of questions. Am I eligible for a discount based on my university degree? Yes. Will Discord be available for students that have bought your CFA course? Not the CFA, but the applied series. Discussing Doge cuts, firing employees, you mentioned has multi-year effect on aggregate demand because they are no longer spending. Is that assuming those fired employees never work again? No, I mean, obviously they're going to work again, except those with 2 jobs may never get that again. The cuts would be for the government deficit would be not just this year, but multi-years. So the aggregate demand coming from deficit spending, as supporting the economy, would be each and every single year. Now, they're free to go out and get another job somewhere else, but it's not the government that will be supporting that aggregate demand anymore. It has to come from other sectors or the private sector mostly. Mostly predominantly. Completely. There we go. Let's say it the right way. Video that explains ZQ contract, how to trade it. Yeah, it's in applied options, and there is a section in there for Treasury futures. I believe ZQ is in there. UK national movement to boycott U.S. businesses and goods on that specific day. One day's not enough. It has to be a change in behavior that lasts more than one day. One day's not enough because if I don't buy, a certain brand of something today, I'm just going to buy more of it tomorrow. One day's not enough. It has to be a switch altogether, a significant change in behavior. Crypto rallied this afternoon after announcement from him on certain cryptos to be added to Fed stockpile. Any view on it? Well, I don't think it's going to be what the crypto market expects it to be. I don't think. Well, first of all, he can't order the purchase of Bitcoin. The president cannot spend money. He can request that Congress allocate money towards something, but only Congress controls the purse. So only Congress can spend. A president cannot spend. So, I've sort of posed this question before, that we may be getting near the end of what Trump can do unilaterally. Because as you keep doing more, at some point, you got to pay for it. At some point, you're going to need some money allocated to it. He's going to need Congress for that. Right now, there has been no Congress up to now. I should say there has been nothing but Trump. There has been no U.S. government. The hope is, or the belief is, that they're going to have to show up at some point. You're going to have to spend at some point, and for that you need Congress. Lutnick said he will remove government spending from GDP data. Thoughts? How's he going to get that done? And I guess my first question would be, what does he mean, government spending? Does he mean the G component of GDP? And if so, why? The G component is the final spending on goods and services. That's all it is just the final spending on goods and services. Well, a country does do that. And if you remove it, you remove valuable signals in the economy, like where you might want to invest, based on where the demand for goods or services happens to be. If he means transfer payments, all the money that governments give out to businesses and consumers, that does not show up in G. That shows up in C and I. So if you give a whole bunch of transfer payments to consumers and they go and spend money, how are you going to take that out of there? Because you do have a multiplier effect on that too. So how are you going to remove that? How do you remove government spending from GDP? The only person that can make a statement is somebody who is uninformed about how GDP is calculated and uninformed about the difference between what shows up in GDP as far as the G component versus government spending. Just because the government spends $1 doesn't mean it shows up in the G component of GDP. It could show up in the C component. I think he has a lack of understanding of GDP, and he's just making simple, broad statements that off the top of his head sound good to an uninformed person, but to an informed person, it's like, do you realize how stupid that statement is? But I don't think he does. You'd first have to say, well, what do you mean government spending? And I'm sure he means the components that probably don't even show up in G. So how the hell are you going to get that done? I don't see it. You can adjust nominal GDP for the deficit. You can adjust it for that and get a good measure of what growth would have been if you had a balanced budget. But to remove government spending, then how are you going to remove government spending without removing the effective taxation that got the money out of the system to be spent anyways? It's just stupid. It's a stupid statement. It's just a stupid statement. I just had let's see. Trudeau says call with Trump was colorful and warns trade war will continue for foreseeable future. That is not good, is it? That is not good at all. China, Russia will very likely use AI to target Canadian voters. Coming from the intelligence agency. Anybody surprised with that? We do have an election coming up. Made the mistake of buying after earnings twice. Both times companies went down 20% in a month. Mega cap, very painful. I'll be amazed if the U.S. economy avoids a recession with the current foreign policy. I agree with you there. And it will be a global recession. And a global recession is ugly. I mean, it's ugly. You need everyone to work together. And Trump does not work together. He wants everyone to bow down to him. He's not a team player. I think we can say that. He's not going to say, okay, you do this and I'll do this and we'll all work together and we'll share the glory. No, which means you go into a global recession, it is going to be tough to get out. And I think the rest of the world is probably every day moving closer to the realization that, well, we have to go it alone ex-US, which would be bad for the US. Any recession, I think, would be a long, prolonged recession. So I hope you've been careful with your paychecks. How does one overcome a thinking of the analysis being priced in? Well, valuation, right? If you look at a company and you look at its valuation, it's selling for 3 times earnings, it's not priced in. Or something else is priced in that you're missing. But if you say, this is a good company, it's trading for 100 times forward earnings, it's all priced in. Right? The valuation will tell you to the extent that it's priced in. Whom should I mail if I got an invalid invite pop-up? Me. Discord is available from an app. Yes, I believe they have an app. Small U.S. investor, 30K. How do I do volatility trade? That I cover in the applied series. European stocks over the next decade. I don't know. I really don't know. Feels like it could be time for Europe to come together. If you look at pricing action in the last little while, yeah, the market agrees with you on that. Trend in the Middle East countries, which is growing boycott anything that's American. I think that's been there for a very long time. Consumers substituting American fast food chains at home with regional choices. Yeah, you're going to see more of that everywhere. Let's see. Thoughts on potash and gold investment as a hedge on tariffs. So gold has contracts. Potash doesn't. The more proper name for potash is potassium nitrate. Does not have a tradable contract. There is no futures contract for potassium nitrate, which means you're going into the miners themselves. Don't know that being a hedge against tariffs are going to work, because if it doesn't stop the flow of imports into U.S., the U.S. government collects the tariff, not the U.S. buyer and not the Canadian seller. So I don't know how it would hedge against a tariff. Same with gold. I don't know how that would hedge against the tariff. Any thoughts on Canadian banks going forward? The same thought, I guess, that every Canadian has at any point in time ever. Solid dividend payers, never cancel their dividend. Nice, safe place to be. There's only 6 of them. Of the big banks, there's only 6 of them. So, no matter what is going on, it's always a good time to buy the Canadian banks. Why tariffs on Canada are bullish for the CAD-US pair? Well, now I'm confused because of the way you write it. Are you writing it like a currency quote, or are you writing it like a fraction? CFA curriculum always writes currency quotes as a fraction, CAD over US. That is not a currency quote. It's just a fraction with the denominator being 1. So it is price over base, and the denominator is 1. So if we're at 1.44, that's saying 1 US dollar is worth $1.44 Canadian, or if you're buying a US dollar, it'll take $1.44 Canadian to buy a US dollar. Do you mean it like that? If you mean it like that, tariffs will strengthen the US dollar versus the Canadian, because the belief is the Canadian will weaken. The economy will weaken, so it would be bullish in that sense. Or do you mean it like an exchange rate? And in an exchange rate, in this sense, the first one is a 1, not the second one. The first one is a 1. I didn't say it would be bullish. It would actually be bearish. However, my belief is that they cannot last long, because it is such a stupid thing to do. It's such a destructive thing to do that they'd be reversed rather quickly as soon as he realized, oh boy, I really made a big mistake here. I really shit the bed. I'll get Howard Lutnick to go out there and claim victory for something, and then we'll remove the tariffs because of, he'll never admit that he made a mistake. It'll be, and he won't go out and reverse him. He'll have somebody else go out and reverse him. But my belief is they'll be reversed, which means I should be long the Canadian. How one should think about position sizing. That's not something I can answer in a short question. I would say it should be, as you go from the asset class to the sector to the stock. An asset class is 60-40, right? 60% equities, 40% bonds. It could be if you're 20 years old, it could be 100% equities. But you're diversified. You're holding a broad-based equity ETF. If you're holding a sector, any one sector, I don't know, 10, 15%, any one security, it should be small enough that it can't hurt you. You don't want any one single name to be big enough in your portfolio that if it goes to zero, it completely takes you down, right? So, I don't know. It depends on the size of your portfolio, I guess. But 2% in any one single name, to me, seems reasonable. Give me some encouragement on a path towards a successful CFA. I have upheld my belief I should not put the minimum effort to just get by. Good. That's why I make sure I know the curriculum well, spend more time than my peers on my learning path. But currently, I've seen so many people in my job who just memorize everything and think only 3 letters behind their name matter. Well, I mean, you're gonna, even in university, when I was in university, you do group work. You have some people in the group who they just want to do the minimum amount to get the assignment done. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Only the piece of paper matters. It doesn't matter. No one cares. Yeah, but you miss the richness of everything when you do that, right? You miss you do learn when you push yourself. So, I mean, you can run with that crowd, but I guess the advice I would give here is, more Shakespearean: to thine own self be true. Right? You don't have to copy what everyone's taking a shortcut. I'm going to take a shortcut. If it's not in you to do that, don't do it. Do your own thing. Just do your own thing. It will pay off in the long run. Just do your own thing. I think the rest we can get past that. During the election, you see more anti-Kamala than anti-Trump. Yep. Which was also my take going into the election. It's hard to say now, but do you think things would be worse under Kamala? Well, define worse. What do you mean by worse? As far as a market participant that wants to make money, yes, it would be worse under Kamala. Trump delivers volatility, which for somebody who knows how to trade volatility, thank you every single day. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm at this point having the best start of a year I think I've had in a very long time because of the volatility. I never want it to end. I'm also not American, so I don't have to suffer the consequences of whatever downsizing he's doing. I'm not going to lose my job because of him. So as far as worse, I guess you'd have to tell me what part of society I'm in first, and what you mean by worse. No matter what policy is enacted by any politician, no matter how benevolent that politician is, no matter how well-meaning the policy is, every policy will always have some unacceptable outcomes for certain people. You're not going to get a policy where everybody wins. Either a lot of people win and another group get the bill, or a lot of people win but some people lose their jobs or lose their income, or a particular industry is sacrificed for the growth of another industry. There will always be unacceptable outcomes for certain people. So the word worse is too big. We would first have to tame the complexity of that word. You like that? Tame the complexity of that word and define it. So I guess I got to be Socrates here and say, well, what do you mean by worse? I know this is definitely politics, but it's also pretty clear the impact current admin has had on markets, and it seems like a relevant question. If you're an investor, this sucks. If you're a trader, you couldn't ask for anything better. But under Kamala, the investors would be saying great, and the traders would be saying, well, this sucks. Why should the investors be favored over the traders? Right? This is our day. This is our time. Investors go home. Boo, boo. So worse, I guess, going back to another question previously, is how do you know something is good or bad? It depends on what side of the gun you're standing on. If you need to resolve that mobile display issue, let me know. I don't know what we're doing there. I was going to say, I think we have it resolved, but I don't know what we're doing there. You think this guy is deliberately keeping the markets volatile and he and his associates are making money? I got a sneaking suspicion. There's a part of me that thinks that, it fits the data. For other administrations, I probably would reject it by saying, no, I mean, you should, it's coincidental. But this is more than coincidental. It matches the background, the psychology, and the inclination of the people around. By saying the inclination, what I'm saying is I wouldn't put it past them at all. That if it came out later on, I'd say, well, duh, right? So do I think that is there a part of me that thinks some of this is deliberate? Yeah, there is a part of me. With the U.S. isolating itself, going alone, do you see China somewhat filling that void? Yeah, they have been moving closer to South America. They make a lot of free trade deals, by the way. Perhaps the yuan replacing the dollar. I wouldn't go that far. Curious on your thoughts on Chinese equities. I have no opinion on it because I know nothing about that market. So we'll just pass that. Discord already answered that. 25-year-old guy. Feel really dumb when I hear. Is this the same one that I've answered before? I hear experts, people like you. How can someone be smart and intelligent? Oh, well, it's education and experience. No mystery there. Education and experience. How do I know I become smart and intelligent person? Because you don't feel the need to tell anyone you're a smart and intelligent person. when you are telling people that you're smart and intelligent and that you got really good words, you are neither smart nor intelligent, nor do you have really good words. What might happen in the coming months? I'd like to get your perspective. Cuts in U.S. government spending lead to a deceleration, decline in GDP. Market assumptions to be that inflation expectations fall. Fed will have more room to cut. That is what ZQ is saying, yes. Problem I see is monetary policy alone would not be able to counteract a reduction in fiscal support. I cannot see a way the private sector would be able to make up for government spending. That scenario, along with productivity gains from AI, I cannot see a way where the U.S. can avoid a deflationary spiral. I've been saying that for quite some time, that the backdrop of all this supply-driven inflation that we've had, that we're finally getting rid of, the backdrop is a deflationary world. Even with monetary policy support and tax cuts, the debt levels and asset price pressure would be a negative self-reinforcing cycle. Do you see a way the U.S. would be able to avoid this absent massive fiscal support? Oh, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to end that way. Based on the behavior of the administration that we've seen so far, I would say it seems almost inevitable. If this type of behavior continues, it's almost inevitable that we're going to have not just a U.S. or a North American recession, but a global recession. If this kind of uncertainty continues, or what it does is it unites the rest of the world against the U.S., and a bunch of free trade deals are made excluding the U.S., saying, fine, you're not, we can't rely on you anymore, and the world goes it alone without the U.S. You could get that. Or you could get a Congress that finally shows up and says, hey, okay, we like where you're going, but the direction you're taking to get there is incredibly destructive. We got to find another way. Let's slow this down. Why do we have to get there tomorrow? Can't we get there in 2 years? Can't we have a 4-year plan? But I don't know that I would count on that. What you need in the U.S. is one brave person to stand up and say, the emperor has no clothes. And to take a stand, and others will begin to join him. But one by one, that's the point of threats and a bully, is you focus on each individual one and you isolate them, and nobody wants to stand up for you anymore because they don't want that punishment, and everyone's afraid to say anything, but everybody wants to say something. That was what wokeism was. Many people disagreed with it, but we're just terrified to say anything, saying, look, they're not looking at me, they're not talking about me, I'm just going to keep my head down and keep going because I don't want this shit in my life. This will pass, but I don't want this shit in my life. And I think a lot of Republicans are along the same lines of, I don't get paid enough, really, and I don't want this shit in my life. Video of the madness going on in the White House. Bitcoin up 11%. Is there a strategic benefit comes from the U.S. by this move? No. Well, I mean, I'm saying it for myself. I do not believe in this at all. And if Bitcoin right now needs the U.S. to say we're going to buy a reserve to avoid crashing in price, then there is nothing there. There is nothing there. It would be like the U.S. just deciding to prop up an industry that should go away. If it relies on that, if it needs that, then this is a zombie asset that is only being supported by the hope of government support. It should have to stand on its own. If Bitcoin can't stand on its own, if crypto can't stand on its own, if it's waiting for countries to begin to buy a whole bunch of it, then it really has no use cases on its own. The internet, the cell phone, the radio, the TV, the car did not need the government to go buying this stuff to validate those products or those services. The market validated on its own. If the market can't validate crypto on its own without the U.S. having to buy a whole bunch, then it has no reason for existence, which has been my position for since it first showed up. I thought, but what problem do I have that this is a solution for? It's been 15 years and no one has been able to give me any kind of decent answer to that. Other than being a gambling asset, what is it? It would be like saying, what problem do I have in my life that a roulette table solves? Well, nothing, but you can make some money on it, right? Well, if you get rid of all the roulette tables, all you would do is take one gambling asset away from gamblers. So if the roulette wheel can't solve any problems in my life, and Bitcoin can't solve any problems in my life, is not Bitcoin a roulette wheel? That's my opinion. FTSE index. Okay. Previous video, wealth tax. I highly disagree. This is not about, oh, you didn't work. Okay, I'm not gonna read this. 2 points. I'm willing to bet you disagree with a wealth tax because you have no wealth, because you would not be faced with a wealth tax. So of course you disagree with my position on a wealth tax. I find that most people are in favor of raising taxes and of higher taxes as long as it's not on them. As long as it's somebody else that has the higher tax, most people are in favor of that. Most people are in favor of policies that don't affect them or negative policies that don't affect them. Yes, let more immigrants in the country, but not in my neighborhood, in their neighborhood. Don't build affordable housing in my neighborhood. You want to see that kind of thing, go to California. And bleeding heart leftists, you got to let them in, you got to let them in. And whenever you say, well, we're going to build affordable housing here, you had the whole neighborhood up in arms. Not in our neighborhood, in their neighborhood, not in our neighborhood. So unless you have built a company, sacrificed a lot, hired people, built wealth, paid your taxes, and are perfectly okay with the government coming back next year saying, all that money that you already paid tax on, we're here to take more of it. At that point, if you say, yes, I fully agree that you should take more of what I sacrificed for, even though I've already paid tax, then we can have this conversation. If you have wealth that you earned and you're in favor of the wealth tax, then we can have this conversation. But if you have no wealth and a wealth tax can't affect you, well, of course you're in favor of it. Of course you are. Now, the other thing you can do to be in this conversation is this. Every government will allow you to pay more in tax. When I file in Canada, at the very bottom, you can fill in a number more than what you owe as a donation to society. You can do that. Why don't you, if you agree with the wealth tax, why don't you just start paying a wealth tax? Why don't you say, okay, well, how much money have I got in the bank? Let me take 2% of that and I'll just send that in every year. How much equity do I have in my house? How much am I worth? Let me take 2% and send that in a year. Now, if you start doing that, then I'll listen to you about your opinion about a wealth tax. But if you're just saying impose it on those other people, I'm fully in favor of that, and it doesn't affect you. If you're not taking the medicine, don't prescribe it to somebody else. So I don't need to read the rest. I think it's an idealistic statement. When I was younger, I was idealistic as well. Everybody votes Democrat till they start making money, right? Everyone's a Democrat till they start making money. And then you start thinking, well, hang on a second. Some of these policies are only good as sort of a, I don't have it, you have it, so I'm okay with it being taken away from you, but not from me. The moment a policy affects you, I bet you it would be a different story. What if I said, instead of a wealth tax, why don't we just raise taxes on everyone? You probably would say, right? No, I'm against a wealth tax. I'm against taxing money twice. You tax me 53%, great. You come back next year and say, you know what? Can we get another 2%? Because there are people who have not sacrificed as much in you and haven't made the right decisions, and we want to give some of your stuff to them. Like, no, I've already paid my tax. I've already paid tax on this money. You can't come back next year and say we've changed our mind. That's a very Trump thing to do. No, totally against it. Okay. Not on a construction site, yeah. Discord. Tesla sales have dropped. D-R-O-P-E-D, past tense, dropped in Europe. Capital E, let's show the country some respect. Let's show the continent some respect because of the impact of Elon. Politics is kind of a boycott because sales went down 45%. Went down even more than that in Germany. I got somebody here from Europe, from Switzerland, from Geneva, and I pointed out that headline. I say, did you see that Tesla sales, I think it was like 73%. I see they dropped in 73% in Germany. And he said, what? There's still people in Germany buying Teslas? He was shocked that there was even 37% still buying them. Never mind a drop of 37%. He was shocked that anyone was still buying them. Talk about keyman risk, right? I mean, is any shareholders in Tesla having a discussion about what to do with this guy? He is single-handedly destroying the company, and he just doesn't seem to care. That's a big deal, I think. Can we really assume that the U.S. will take the isolation road? Well, I don't think they think they're taking the isolation road. I think Trump thinks that the U.S. is so strong and all-powerful and so great, everyone will do anything they can to be here. So if I just threaten everyone, they'll make a beeline to our country, and everyone will come here, and everything will be great, and rich people will pay $5 million to be here, like people are paying $1 million to be a member of his golf course, and because that's the world he lives in. And people will pay the $1 million to have access to power. Of course they will, because it's an investment in something that pays off. So he seems to think that that'll be the case, and the U.S. will be the only country standing, and every other country will be in poverty, and the U.S. can just take over the entire world. I don't think he thinks he's isolating the world, isolating the U.S. I think he thinks that when he does this, he's isolating other countries from the world. In his mind, he's winning. No matter how badly the numbers show red ink and how much is losing, in his mind he's winning, and when it's all over, he still will read his victory speech no matter what the outcome is. I don't think that he's intentionally isolating the U.S. I think he thinks he's winning, and the unintended consequences that he will isolate the U.S. Democrats may be whatever, but they sure would try to restore relations with U.S. allies. Yes, they would. But, it comes down to this, is that you guys over there, you've had this guy, then that guy, then this guy, then that guy. Now we got you guys, and you guys want to make a deal with us all over again. How do we know in 4 years you're not going to have another one of those guys, and we're going to have to go through the whole thing all over again? This is a loss of goodwill. So once you become untrustworthy, because of the nature of your system, okay, if I make a deal with you, I'm only going to have to pay money to get out of the deal in 4 years. I'm going to have to change relationships again because you might have this guy back again, or a guy like this back again. I'm sorry, but, I'd rather make an investment in a country that's more stable politically. Wow, that you would say that about the U.S., that the politically unstable. But, I mean, the oscillation between all the way to one end or all the way to the other end, the unpredictability, the level of uncertainty. Yes, you could have Democrats come in and say, we can fix all this, but the other side has to trust that, well, is this just for the next 4 years? or is this American policy that presidents will support, right? This could have much longer term consequences. This could be the fall of Rome, with Nero in an orange toga fiddling on the roof as the city burns. Majority of people think that it's Zelensky, an idiot, and I think this. Okay, I'll stop there. See, I don't know who this is. I don't know who this is. We can't weight this person by their credentials. It could be a PhD in international relations that has negotiated peace deals for 50 years, or it could be a 20-year-old in their basement with no world experience whatsoever. We don't know. So we don't know what weight to put on this comment. That is a problem with these social media sites and these public comments, is that anybody can comment and you don't know who they are. So you don't know what to do with this thing. That is why on Discord I particularly made the decision to weight the comments by your credentials. You will get a diamond beside your name if you demonstrate that you are an expert. By having certain credentials, you'll get that diamond. So when other people are reading, they can scan down all the comments, they can see the diamonds, they can read the question or the statement, say, well, this person is an expert. You know, if I'm not understanding what they're saying, I should think a little bit more about it. But I'm sure this person here is not an expert. First of all, an expert wouldn't talk like that. So this is probably just a 20-something with an opinion that is unfounded in anything but the propaganda they've been fed. Regarding your clip, maybe a more appropriate parody is Scott Farkas. I don't know that. I don't know. Christmas Story. I don't remember that. I think damage done to alliances will be far greater and long-lived than... I just said that. Yeah, I think you're right. People eventually go back to voting with their wallets once emotions normalize. Yeah. As a citizen, I view tariffs as a tax, and given the spending problem and large deficits, I understand the need to cut spending and raise revenues. Trump has an easier time raising tariffs than he would have raising taxes, both politically and operationally. But raising tariffs actually lowers your tax revenue. Let me see if I can explain that. So let's say that this is tax revenue and tariffs will never replace it. And let's say that this is tariffs and you have goods coming in your border and you're going to tariff them. As soon as you have tariffs, you're going to have a lower level of goods coming in. So it's not going to be like, well, we're going to get 25% of this. You're going to get 25% of some lower amount. But it's also going to send your capital markets downwards, which means you're going to have capital losses, not capital gains. And while capital gains are taxed, which goes into tax revenue, capital losses, you can go back 3 years and get some of this tax revenue back. So you actually have lower tax revenue going forward because you have no capital gains to tax. You also have people who become unemployed. Well, they paid payroll taxes. They pay income taxes. Well, now there's no income to be taxed. You'll have lower corporate profitability, so you'll have lower corporate tax revenue here. So in all, this affects capital markets, which affects this. You end up with actually lower government revenues overall. There is no winning here. As I've said before, this is all just degrees of losing. There is no winning here. Let us know. Buy and sell them. Equity's getting thumped. Yield spreads, high yield spreads, only budging a bit. Why is that? I've been asking that for the last 2 years. How come spreads just are looking around saying nothing to see here? I agree. It just seems, all quiet on the OAS front. Thoughts on crypto reserve announcement? No thoughts. No thoughts really. I'm not a trade expert, but I'm under the impression the European consumer has had a preference for minimized buying of U.S. products for decades now. Yeah, I think you're right, but I think more recently it's even more heightened. Catering all pathetic sensitive people get triggered by saying Trump. Fairly new retail investor. Recent volatility has been killing me because, to be honest, I don't fully stand in what I'm doing. You think CFA courses would help me? CFA courses really take an institutional approach, and really it's a heavy bias towards a long-only approach. So I don't know that would help you with volatility as much as it would be more about building a portfolio that is more resilient to volatility. but not profitable, not profiting on volatility, but resilient. The applied course definitely. Don't like it when you insert your conservative views into your analysis. Well, I get that. I relish your trailer trash name calling. Upon reflection, you're a human, not AI. How much better off would be right now with Harris in office? I actually answered that sort of in a question a while back. We have to first define, well, what do you mean by better off, right? Why do people hold on to concepts when it's obvious that there are inherent flaws in their thinking? More than likely, they don't see the inherent flaws in their thinking. They think you're the one with the inherent flaws in your thinking, right? So just to give you an idea, you could be a born-again Christian and talking to an atheist, and you could say, it's so clear the world, the universe was designed by God, but here's this atheist clinging to, like, why do they cling to these beliefs, when there are these inherent flaws? But the atheist looks at you and says, why are you clinging to these beliefs when there are inherent flaws? So we would first, notice what I keep doing, have to define, well, what inherent flaws do you mean? And is there any evidence to back up that they are inherent flaws, or are they just matters of faith that you look at and say, my faith is fact, so you have inherent flaws? So we'd first have to, pare this down and say, well, show me an inherent flaw. Tell me what you think is fact. Are you confusing faith for fact? Right? That's it's a tough question to be answered without a big discussion about the nature of the question first. I think it was Einstein that said the question is like 98% of the work. An example is a lot of Trump voters will refuse to admit any of his policies will harm the U.S. Yeah, sometimes people can only, they're told it's going to make things great, and you can make a case that if we do this, then this, then this, then this. If, a whole bunch of assumptions to get to the conclusion, but they just buy the conclusion without saying, but wait a minute now, this is a conditional conclusion on all of those if statements being true. Many of those if statements are not going to be true. Looks like a tropical earthquake blew the market, yeah. Volatility is amazing with Trump. I do wish we had Kamala instead. If you had, here is the perfect combination. If Kamala had come out and said, all that woke shit we had, that's over with. That's done with. All that DEI shit, that is done with. She probably would have had a much better chance of winning. And then if she could have been a steady hand but deliver volatility to the market for the traders, yeah, I think I'd be saying, look at this. This is nice. But how do you be a steady hand and deliver volatility? We all want low interest rates and price correction. Something has to give. Something is giving today. Recession, low growth, and eventually lower expected inflation will yield lower interest rates. Nothing gets rates down and inflation down like a recession. Separate people from their paychecks and you will get disinflation. And right now, Trump is, with Doge, is separating people from their paychecks. But I agree with that. I'm not going to be critical on that. I agree with downsizing the size of government. If you can't balance your budget, it's a spending problem, not a revenue problem. I agree with that. Same in Canada. I think we need more of that. But all the other uncertainty is causing companies to begin to lay off too. Look at the Challenger job cuts report today and look at a 3-year chart. Right off the side of the chart, you have to go back to the pandemic to find a jump like that. You are seeing people being separated from their paychecks, and that will get you lower interest rates. Stagflation is here. Decrease in non-farm payrolls, increase in unemployment rate. Hopefully we start to see price equals value, at least closer to value per share. Well, we are getting prices coming down. Yield curve talk, as we learned through CFA track, has a lot of noise. Learn to focus on time-dependent returns versus conditional correlation and variance. Volatility regimes need to be stable. Otherwise, that base layer for portfolio creation and planning will be checked. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that it's based on that kind of stability, right? Volatility does not create the need to rebalance much more frequently. Yes, it does. And the need to revert to risk reduction by yeah. So volatility is not an investor's friend. But the market is made up of investors and traders, and we have a trading market. Do not invest, well, don't act like an investor in a trading market, and when you have low volatility, don't act like a trader in an investor's market. We had an investor's market for the last couple of years. Now it's our turn. Now it's a trader's market. Europe will need to increase spending. Germany just announced something big today. Big spending. America can't be everywhere at once, which is why Trump won't guarantee security. And how can he talk to Putin if he tells the world America will provide security? You're being blinded by Trump's rudeness. We'll pass on this. Trump fan. They have psychiatrists for Trump derangement syndrome. Well, then I would suggest you go see one. I mean, if you can't take any criticism of a person who makes dumb decisions, and if you immediately accuse the other person of having Trump derangement syndrome, unless we absolutely bend down, praise him, kiss the ring and say, oh my God, I'm a Trump fan forever, I believe everything. If you can't separate things, if you can't say, well, I generally like the guy, but I disagree with some things, if you can't do that, sounds to me like you're the one with Trump derangement syndrome. But I got good news for you, Pete7971. They have psychiatrists for Trump derangement syndrome. You should go see one. Let's pass on that. I thought Mark having a background in philosophy, these are all at the bottom because no one really cares about these. They found their way to the bottom. No kidding. Background in philosophy is more nuanced and can more about things than just money. Who says that's all I care about? You don't even know me. We're talking about finance. We're talking about markets. What do you want me to break out into a cause for world hunger at this point? Come on, man. Compartmentalize. Really just shows his mindset is typical of that of... Okay, let's just pass. Not every country views Friday events as negative. We in Russia view it as very positively. Well, no kidding. You do. Right? I mean, yeah. Finally, a U.S. president who understands Russia. Well, that's the end of it this week. We'll leave it at that. Maybe I should, when doing the comments, get to about, 80% of the way to the bottom and the last 20%, just ignore them. That's it.